Hello, I am a Shadow of the Colossus fanatic and a deep fan of Team Ico. As my first video for YouTube, I want to give out my personal interpretation of the lore of the Ico Shadow Colossus and the last Guardian world. I believe that I have something significant to contribute to the already enriched Ico Shadow Colossus and the last Guardian community. Through some deep delving of mine and research on the work of greats such as Nomen Colossus and Max the Rat, I've constructed a grand theory interlinking all the titles together. Investigating the nuances of each game, from Ico to Shadow Colossus, The Last Guardian, Project Robot, I wish to input within the community information that has not been presented onto YouTube concerning these games. This information includes the original lore for the nonsense stages of the development of Shadow of the Colossus, the hints about Gen Design's new game, and the revelations of their relationship to each other. I would like to thank and give an honorable shout out to the individuals whose dedication and brilliancy gave me the inspiration to start my first video. I'd like to thank the creator of the website YourDare.com, whose detailed analysis of the mechanics of the magic system enabled me to form my own theory. I would also like to thank Max the Rat, whose erudite analysis and videos have helped to encourage the creation of my own video to cultivate my theory on the lore of the shared universe of the games. I'd like to thank Nomad Colossus, indisputably the greatest of all Shadow Colossus fans, whose extensive and intensive archaeological delving of every nuance of Shadow Colossus helped form the bulk of my theory. It is my hope to be as extensive in my own analysis of the games. I also like to thank the people at Reddit, from whom I was able to procure the original lore of Shadow Colossus when it was still in its beta stages. I found that the original lore confirmed my own suspicions about the history of Shadow Colossus with man's congress with the gods. From this body of information that I've accrued, I've created a timeline of the shared universe world of Ico, Shadow Colossus, and the Last Guardian, and Team Robot. I also created a theory about the relation between the games and the intersecting themes shared within them. I also addressed the misunderstandings the audience has about the game's lore. Finally, I figure out the story of the next Gen Design game and how it justifies the theory. Once you understand the magic, you understand the lore. Once you integrate this understanding with the game's influences in Christian Abrahamaic, Hebrew lore, and Gnosticism, you know the story. Light magic, dark magic, and alchemy are the keys that enable you to dissect the backstory of the Team Ico games. The things I will reveal in the timeline is that the overarching story is very similar to that of Zelda, occurring over the course in man's time, the high upper range of tens of thousands of years. The Ico world has influence from Gnosticism, Hebrew lore, and the Christian Abrahamic faith in Zelda, and as such may reflect this world's version of the antediluvian world. The games are all about this world's version of the pre-flood world and its fall from grace from previous technological epoch. In this theory, my contention is as follows. There was an ancient high civilization that lived in a consortium with the gods, whose advanced technological state was based upon the original or advanced version of the divine light magic, which was derived by the eternal fount of the gods themselves or cultivated by them, and alchemy, which was enhanced by this process. And after tens of thousands of years of existence, this civilization lost this state by becoming vain, proud, bigoted, hedonistic, and materialistic. The fall from grace came from man's use of human sacrifice to cheat death and achieve immortality. That man's twisting of the divine esoteric forces of creation, first via the twisting of light magic from the creation of sacrificial alchemy, and the subsequent direct access to dark magic, the original sacred province of the gods, which produced the ability to practice necromancy, the enslavement of the dead, and the subsequent creation of magical simulacra creatures called chimera, and the weaponization of these forces are what caused its demise. The divine light magic and the enhanced alchemy, which was derived from the eternal font of the immortal gods themselves, was the basis of the technology of the ancient high state. Because not only could the god-derived light magic create more advanced versions of technology by alchemy, light magic representing life itself literally brought things to life. The cities, architecture, and technologies of the old world were literally living constructs. They were alive. The light magic, being the metaphysical manifestation of life itself, brought inanimate objects to life, and the divine original version of this light magic, bequeathed by the gods to man, enabled superior products derived from alchemy. Light magic and dark magic are the integration of these two forces within alchemy represents a sacred process of created existence, an advised cycle of life, sleep, and renewal by death, and subsequent rebirth into new life. The fall from grace occurred through the twisting of this cycle, because man, becoming greedy, wanton, corrupt, and not wanting to part with earthly riches attained in life due to the high technological state of the ancient high civilization, and not understanding or caring about their true immortality via the reincarnation process with rebirth into a new life, sought to cheat death by subverting the divine reincarnation cycle to achieve mortality. By trying to cheat death, the ancient high civilization preferred the divine esoteric force of the world of light and darkness, with light magic representing light and dark magic representing death. And this was done by a version of sacred alchemy, which involved the use of human sacrifice, especially that of the young. Sacred alchemy being twisted into sacrificial alchemy enabled the rich and powerful to extend their lives by literally stealing from the lives of others. The gods found out about this and punished man by taking back the god-derived original divine light magic that the ancient civilization was fueled by. Because the ancient high civilization was a highly advanced technological society, which was based upon the eternal font of the original God-cultivated light magic, all the technologies based upon it were doomed to fade and return to dust. Some people were repentant and sought to reform themselves, going back to the gods, and the gods, though keeping with their punishment, still chose to live with and help reform man. These people would use nature-derived light magic, which was produced by mechanical forces, to create a lesser than the original but still high technological state. Because all the old high technologies were derived from divine sources, men produced from nature-derived light magic could not sustain the original high state technologies, and as such they had to reorient their entire technological state to be fueled by the new man-made derived light magic. Literally have to reinvent the wheel in a technological sense. And while it was still high technological, it was lesser than what it was. But they were reconciling with the gods and reforming. Some nations were unable to accept the censure of the gods and did not want to repent and give up the old god technologies and the wealth derived from those technologies. And they were they were desperate to save the original high state. Tried to find a substitute for the original god-derived light magic, which powered those technologies. They succeeded, and they found that the closest to the god-derived light magic was found in man, primarily by turning to sacrificial alchemy. which was the reason for their punishment in the first place. Within it, they found that the blue goo substrate byproduct of the sacrificial alchemy that was created from humans could activate the old high technologies and abate their collapse. Temporarily, that is. The objects molded from the blue goo were somewhat long-lasting, but they had to be constantly renewed. And their use of their extracted light side of the human sacrifice had to essentially put it had to be sustained. And as a result, these technologies were literally based upon human sacrifice in order to keep the original high state. They had to essentially steal the light side from human sacrifice in alchemy. Since this was used as a votive power to power the old technologies, it was ultimately derived from world sources which are doomed to die, and they couldn't abate the deterioration of the ancient high state technologies which were derived from God power, from the gods indefinitely. So it had to be removed, and the old world technologies were disappearing at an alarming rate. Another thing about sacrificial alchemy was that one could control the dead, specifically with the blue goo byproducts, which once were molded into planet forms, could be created into radars and antennas, and this enabled for the first time in human history the direct access to a manipulation of dark magic, which represents the sacred waters of creation, the renewal of life via sleep, and restoration by rebirth into new life. The sacrificial alchemical blue substrate can also aid one to create purpose organisms, chimeras, semblances of life, and in a twisted inversion of the original divine light magic, actually created life from stone itself. Stone effigies were carved into amalgam of different animals, and using the sacrificial blue goo byproduct derived from human and possibly the respective animals that represented those stone statues, they created chimeras, which could be controlled and given superlative capabilities like hypnosis, lightning, fire, and other types of magical abilities. They weren't true animals, but they were like the Colossus, clay dolls, except with flesh. And due to the fact that their moral origins and the fact they were more or less imitations of life, they had to be sustained by the blue goo substrate that was created from humans, because ultimately they were doomed to death and unsustainable as life forms. The nations who understood the advantages of these ventures of being able to abate the deterioration of old high state technologies weaponized these forces with the weaponization of dark magic, the enslaved undead, the alchemy derived magical shimmer monstrosities, which fed on the blue goo that was made from humans, and also in the process created atomic weapon like mechanisms of light and dark magic. They started to invade their neighbors, sacrificing people, whole populations on an industrial scale to maintain the ancient high state. Nations formed alliances and broke them, and countries with imperial bad ambitions and past grudges came to foreplay in a hailstorm of fire and death. At the end, the war that was the doom of the ancient age was a war between these forces of the people who chose to accept the censure of the gods, who we would call the repentance, the light magic users, the reformists, and people who had had essentially got direct access to dark magic, the users, the necromancers. Team Ico's games function differently from other genres in that they're all prequels. The world of the Last Guardian Shadow Colossus in Ico is a post-apocalyptic world. This is a long list and appendix of points that I'll go through and analyze my own theory. And they are as followed. Just the revelations of the next Team Ico game and how it substantiates this theory. The hints from the next game, the story of the princess and the troll. The machinations of the world in terms of magic and the relationship between light and dark magic in the creation of the world. The powers that be, the consortium gods which exists in the Ico world. The other races besides man in this world, the gods, giants, or trolls, and the wars of the gods before the advent of man. The fallen pantheon, the enemies of the gods, the ones before man, the giants and trolls, and possibly others. The time of the ancient stories where men awoke and discovered magic in the other races of the world in their contact with the gods. The use or discovery of light magic. The alliance of man with the gods against the fallen powers and other forces, and the first heroic age. The congress with the gods, the ancient high civilization built upon god-derived light magic and alchemy with gods as citizens, and the advanced light magic gods as a gift to power the civilization. The great high civilizations of the old world, based upon the de-facto light magic, the powers that be, the gods, and the advanced alchemy therein, and that the world is essentially based upon technological magic. The first ancient apocalyptic wars against the fallen dark powers, the enemy gods, the advanced technology used to fight the principal opponents of man, the giants, and this constitutes the second heroic age. The ancient high civilization, the chief defenders, warriors, or superpower, serving the gods in combating the dark forces and essentially defeated them and contained them. The world restoration after the first apocalyptic worlds, in which man and God repair the earth, but the world is less beautiful than before, and man being traumatized, deified the original glory of their ancestors, which creates a type of obsession with claiming some illusion of their lost glory. Though they still had their high state, many people died, the population was severely damaged, and the wars devastated the earth. And there was generous nation of people living through and passing on the legends of the foreign view of the world. Then we'll begin with Project Robot, which is the beginnings of man's demise, with man's success with the gods in the ancient wars begets arrogance, vanity, and pride. And they believe they are only ones serving the powers that be and willing the light. They see themselves as light itself. The fall from grace, the destruction of the ancient high civilization, and its fall to the dark powers. Divorce of the powers that be the gods from man. The beginnings of human sacrifice. And we're going to talk about the loss and the significance and the search for the substitute of the divine light magic, and the product of human sacrifice itself. Then we talk about the ancient apocalypse, the second apocalyptic wars, and how essentially with sacrificial alchemy and man's direct access to dark magic caused the great fall. And we'll talk about the advantages of fallen alchemy and the weaponization of the forces and the byproducts of the extraction process, the essential of life. Then we'll talk about essentially the Great Restart, where the world of man has regressed to a lesser state than it was previously, and the world is rife with the remnant horrors of created monsters, necromancy, and human sacrifice. The retreat of the gods, or at least some distances, and the sense of the powers that be the gods after man's fall and the prohibition of knowledge. We will go to the last guardian, which hints about the doom of the ancient world, the landscapes, and how human sacrifice began, and what the ancient city of Ness actually, how it relates to the story and how it maintained itself after the fall from grace. We'll talk about the master, the ancient kingdom, the nobles who maintained themselves and their civilization. And we'll also talk about the magical war beasts born of alchemy, the Tricos, and why they're created from stone and how they are eldritch abominations born from human sacrifice and must devour the byproducts of human sacrifice and why they're only doomed to extinction. And we're going to talk about the boys people and essentially put the tower and what it says about the ancient civilization. Then we go on to Child Colossus. We talk about Dorman and address the massive misconceptions about Dorman, Dorman's land, Dorman as Prometheus and Baphomet, and why they decided to use their power to resurrect mortals, the true form of Dorman, which is obscured by darkness, we have never seen it, and how the original Shadow Crisis website discuss how metaphysical beings like Dorman and the dead appear in the world as shadows. Dorman had wings. Dorman is the integration of the divine feminine, divine masculine, which is Baphomet, and he also has reference to Nimrod and the significance of his name. Dorman and Gnosticism, which go back to Baphomet again, and Dorman is kindness and compassion towards humans as an avenue towards their end, because it cultivated vanity, or talk about Shinar, which is the name of the ancient of the Philippines lands in Shadow Colossus in the original lore. It is also the biblical name of the plane which the Tower of Babel was created, just like the shrine of worship is based upon. We're going to talk about the 4 pillars of the Forbidden Lands, which is Dorman, their control of light beings, and the use of light and dark magic for resurrection and alchemy, and how Shinar was built in the vein of the old world. We'll talk about the verse usurper culture, which is essentially put Emma's predecessors, and how their magic, their beliefs, and their trauma, and how they came to subvert the control away from Dorman, and about the invasion of Shinar from the censer of gods and the wrath of gods and the sealing of Dorman, and how Emma's predecessors used the massacre to seize power over the populace, and they incited an inquisition against the people that were resurrected by Dormans, knowing them as essentially put an affront to the gods of Dorothy, and how essentially the Colossi have human remnants in them, have human corpses in them. And we're going to talk about the Wanderer's time, about why one was sacrificed, why they guard their lands, the analysis of their society, and the state of the Forbidden Lands. And why Mana is not the queen, and why Wanderer doesn't need to atone. Then we go to the world of Ico, about what happened to the Horned Children, the sins of Wanderer and Mono, their exodus from the end of the Northern Continent to the Middle Continent, their foundational wars and integration into society, and how they become like the culture bearers and the saviors of civilization on the Central Lands, having an age of esteem. And in their golden age, they are the founders of new civilization, which we will call the domains, which is based upon the use of natural derived light magic, alchemy, and advanced magical technology. We'll talk about the second usurper culture, which is the fall of, which are the Queen's people, the fall of the Horned folk, and there's about their demise, where not their demise came from outside influences, and how people come to their power, and that the magic, technology, and metaphysicality of the Horned folk may have been the reason why they are attacked. We'll talk about the resurgent war against the return of necromancers, and how the Queen's people may actually be time-displaced necromancers from the ancient high state, just like the Master Valley is a time-displaced being. We're going to talk about Wanderers people, the significance of the Horned Helmets, and Yordles folk, and talk extremely about the Queen of Ico and the true course of the Horned Children, and a recap of the conclusion of the theory in the overarching themes. From these points, I created about 4 eras, which extends over 100,000 years, with the first era being 15,000 years, the Wake of Man, the second era being 50,000 years, the time of the ancient high civilization, the third era being the destruction, the fall from grace, which we want to do about 20,000 or 10,000 years, and essentially put the fourth era, the time of the majority of the games, which is post-apocalyptic era. From these things, I created this. I'm going to tell you about how it is that why I came up with these dates. And so, once again, I cannot reiterate. Once you understand the magic of the magic, you understand the lore. Light magic, dark magic, and alchemy are the keys that enable one to understand how the world works. And from it, you can dissect the entire story.